What's up, everyone? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necroc.
I'm Jammin' John.
And we have an album review for you. Yet another one that came out on the 5th of February is the debut album from Finland's Revulsion, self-titled. This came out on Transcending Obscurity, and this is, again, their debut album. They have one other EP. They are from Finland, formed in 2005, and this is Finnish death metal. Kinda. Well, it's Finnish in the sense that they are from Finland.
Right. But it sounds more Tampa-based.
Yeah, so Finland by way of Florida, but Finland. It's an interesting listen, and yeah, we're just kind of launch right into this. The first two tracks, Last Echoes of Life and Pyre, really scream Floridian death metal.
Yes.
Like monstrosity, brutality, deicide, Morbid Angel especially. There's a lot of Morbid Angel-like hooks in it. And it really even kind of has a bit of the production, too. Like, this production is really kind of dry.
Yeah, there's no synths. It's all music,
yeah,
which is cool. They've certainly figured out how to create an atmosphere without adding the extras.
And this is a really interesting release as it goes on, because you get, I would say, at least like 3 different styles of death metal on here throughout the course of this. Starting off, of course, you get these very Floridian, kind of thrashy death metal sections. Lots of, like, you know, chuggy, palm-muted parts that scream.
Lots.
Like deicide, decapitated. I know they're not from Florida, but there is definitely some decapitated-like moments, especially in the song Silence. That song just works big, nasty chugs, super low tremolo, just rumbling and hammering drums. I mean, it's just an intense song, and that's pretty much kind of captures like all the strong points of like this more Floridian sound. It was probably one of my favorites when it came down to that. But later on in the album, you get some kind of death doom, atmospheric death metal. This is kind of what I expected when I saw Finnish death metal. Literally, when I saw this, I just assumed, like, all right, this is going to be similar to bands like Phrenolith, Gorophilia, Early Sentenced. But it was a lot different up until I got to this point. Musta Hilta?
Hold on. Musta Hilta? There's a lot of vowels.
Finland, you've got to lay off the vowels, man. You've got a couple on here that there are more vowels in the word than in consonants. It's
would like to buy a consonant. I know that's not how it normally works, but in this case, yeah.
But this song just kind of brings in, like, death doom atmosphere. The dissonant riffs start coming in, and it has a completely different feel than the first 3 tracks alone. Like, it actually almost sounds like a different band with the same vocalist.
Yep, it's good. Evil, bleak atmosphere, awesome dissonant melodies, and yeah, it sounds a lot different. It sounds like, where was this in the album before now?
And again, this was kind of what I was expecting. It's like they all of a sudden kind of just hit the brakes because the tempo slows down, but they kind of took a little bit off the aggression and just dialed up the darkness, the evil. And honestly, this was probably one of my favorite tracks on here, not just because it was so different, but they really just kind of captured that feel. And again, they didn't throw in any synths in there. There's not a lot of extra effects. It's just the band.
Yeah, they don't waste any time either. There's no intros. Every song dives right into it. There is no lead work.
They have 2 guitarists, and not only do you not hear like just strip lead work, like, you know, solos or like a lead melody, really, there are very few harmonies on here too. Generally, it's just, you know, double the amount of chug and the occasional harmony that pops up. They're very, very sparing. But, I mean, honestly, the entire time, I really didn't notice much in terms of missing moments in terms of solos. There are a couple on here, namely the bridge that's in Lahan Siddhata Kirga. I have no idea what that means. But there's a really cool bridge there that breaks into, again, that sort of death doom, kind of atmospheric death metal. And it has a really cool drum pattern, too. I really like the ghost notes. It has its own kind of unique groove, which this album has a lot of groove. But this moment really stood out. And the only thing I think they could have made it better was just a cool lead melody in there. Just kind of peppered up, because this is
something to break the monotony. And it's not like that. I don't want to say monotony like it was a bad thing, because this band is heavier than balls, and they just non-stop chugs. It's a riff factory. But the fact that it doesn't throw in things like lead work or harmonies is what makes it monotonous. It kind of makes it drag a little bit.
You know, nothing wrong with meat and potato stuff. Like, I mean, I'm a fierce, huge fan of Jungle Rot.
Right.
But again, they kind of spice up. There's a little bit of seasoning on the meat and the potatoes. This is pretty much like a potato and a slab of dry, unseasoned meat when it comes down to the lack of solos and harmonies.
Just like Mom used to make.
Yikes. Dinner at John's. Have fun. Bring your own salt and pepper.
Mom, I love you. Good God.
But, and then in terms of like kind of shifting towards another side, the song Unravel actually is almost more of a blackened death metal song. Like, again, the distance comes in, but it's more up-tempo. The blast beats actually scream more black metal blast beats, too.
Yes.
And the overall atmosphere shifts, again, except for the vocals, which the vocals in here are really good. Like, he has a real clear, you know, nasty growl.
His growl is deep, too.
Yeah.
It's Glenn Benton deep.
And he gets, like, the high screams in there, too, so it's nice and varied. But this song is definitely more on the black metal side. And the entire time I was listening to this, it feels like, you know, they were more creative when they stepped outside of that old school death metal box. Now, while they're in there, again, they had some really good songs, namely Silence. I think that is a big standout in terms of just a flat-out killer old school death metal song. And Walls actually brings in some great, like, bolt thrower riffs. Like, it has a solid groove.
So does Silence. That opener riff in Silence is very bolt thrower, too.
I mean, you know, if you're going to emulate old school death metal, emulate good old school death metal.
Right.
And then the last track, Vil Meinen Rituali. There's 2 A's. Longest track on there, and this one just flat out kind of brings the mix of all of it, which I think this is another standout in here because you still get the old school death metal nods, but you also get that death doom feel. There's distant riffing. It's a longer song, and it gives the song room to breathe. Like the movements aren't so, like, you know, condensed, because there's some shorter songs on here that
I mean, the record's predominantly shorter. This is the longest song. I think it was like almost 6 minutes.
Yep.
And you get a lot of 3-minute songs on this album and a couple 2-minute tracks. But this, you know, of course had longer to breathe. It had more song to work with.
And again, I think that's a moment where they kind of stepped outside of the old school death metal box and tried some different things. And again, the atmosphere really kind of made the song stand out. And you still had riffs. You still had big chuggy riffs with big hooks in them. So this band seems to be on kind of like multiple divergent paths in terms of where they could possibly go. This is a debut. They're still kind of testing the waters. But I would say songs like Pawns and Wastelands just kind of need to go. They have cool moments. In fact, Wastelands has a riff in it that is very, very similar to Dawn of the Angry by Morbid Angel.
I mean,
it's really close. And actually it was one of the few that had like a harmony in it, which sounded like the harmony in Dawn of the Angry. But the song has riffs, but it goes nowhere. And Pawns is just kind of a short, almost death grind song that has a couple of cool moments, but again, it didn't really go anywhere. Again, this band seems like, all right, well, we've kind of like put some possible futures out there. We could become like more death doom. We could stick with the old school death metal. Maybe this little blackened thing is kind of cool.
It's a good way to debate the audience, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, it's your debut. You want to try a lot of different stuff. You know, you kind of feel like the need to impress. And for the most part, this is a pretty solid album. So overall, I'm going to give it 3 stars. I think it's a good album. It just kind of needs a little bit of focus and just pepper in some lead melodies and, you know, something to kind of spice up the moment. There needs to be a few more dynamics on here other than just, you know, beat down chugs and then the occasional more dissonant song. The dissonant stuff, the more death doomy stuff, I think is the direction I would like to see this band go, because it just seemed like they were at their most creative at those songs.
Yeah, seems like they had more to say during those times. I also give it 3. I mean, of course, there were parts that could have been better, but it's their debut album. And overall, this album is really heavy.
Yeah.
It's very straightforward, which isn't a bad thing. It just, like Nick said, there could be a little bit more dynamic to it, something to break up these songs a little bit better. Because once you get towards the end of this record, it feels like you've heard this riff already.
Yeah, like a clean melody to open up a song or something.
Sounds like a little recycled. But I mean, still, it's a good record. 3 stars is a worthwhile.
Yeah, this is definitely something you should check out. Don't just take our word for it. What do we know?
Yeah, don't.
I mean, we do listen to a lot of death metal, but
we don't. We're not.
Yeah, no. So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up. If you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. And we have a giveaway going on, John.
We sure do. When we hit 4,500 subs, and good God, thank you for getting us this far. I think we're, I don't know, I looked today, I think 4,200, 43, somewhere in there.
42 something or other.
42 something or other. Yeah, thank you all 4,200 and something of you. When we get to 4,500, we're going to do a little giveaway, and then shortly thereafter, when we hit 5,000, I think we're going to unleash some treats.
Yeah, we're definitely working on some stuff. There's some gears turning, plans in the works.
The spacely sprockets are sprocketing.
That's what they do?
That, I assume, what is Cogswell Cogs? What do they do?
I don't know.
I know they're spacely sprockets. Jetsons.
With that, I bid you guys adieu, and we will catch you later.